Okay, so my next question for you is,
Mhm.
do you feel like you need to do more or less to prove yourself than your counterparts who are also?
More. I have to do more, all the time. And I used to be quiet by doing things and just kind of doing it on the side. And now I have to be vocal to let people know that I've done it. I mean, every male, you have to do more. You have to do more than every male. If you look at most of our teams, it's the females that make the calendars, make the lessons, make the tests. I would say almost all teams, it's the females who do all the organizing. It's just like, nope, I actually did that. I actually. So I feel like I'm always trying to strive to be recognized and noticed.
Than you?
Yeah, definitely more. You're coming in. Well, there's the internal part, right? You have the imposter syndrome of feeling like you have to be so perfect, otherwise people are always going to be judging you. But then the reality is that I can say the same thing as a colleague in a room, and then they can be praised for it, and people can forget that I said it first. And so you think that you have to sort of prove yourself more sometimes because there's sometimes a skepticism or people don't take you as seriously. And I think that, again, part of that's wrapped into being an assistant professor too, of just being younger and newer at it, versus more senior colleagues that students may take to be more authoritative. But then also those senior colleagues tend to be more skewed towards more um, they tend to be not women and minorities, and so again that kind of reinforces that dynamic.
I do. And I think if you look at sort of the demographics of engineering departments, it's sort of, I think it's unfortunate that we still talk about diversity in the context of men versus women. But definitely, I feel like there is that pressure. And this, think, is something that's super well documented. There's papers on this too, in terms of how women um, not only feel pressure to do better in all aspects of research, mentoring, and teaching, they tend to do better, but are still viewed as less capable than their male counterparts. And that's hard because you essentially do recognize that you need to do your best at all times. But then also, it's still not going to be good enough. And so that's something that's really difficult and it creates a lot of pressure.
I don't feel that at all. I feel like it's a perfect merging. I don't have to prove myself over someone else anyway.
I think since education has been a female dominated profession, I don't feel that as much. I actually sometimes feel bad for my male colleagues for the opposite, that they just get like weird comments from students.
My husband gets it the opposite as me because he's an elementary school teacher. So
Mm.
everyone thinks, oh, he's gay. He's just soft. He's this, he's that. And that's the exact opposite as well.
Definitely being a woman teacher is super common. So, in a lot of ways, there's some privilege that I notice from that. Like, I feel like I can definitely get away with being more expressive and it's more comfortable. Maybe like I could tell a student I love you and they're not going to be super weirded out. They just know, like, oh, yeah, you're like motherly instincts and stuff. But then it backfires too that sometimes I feel like you get viewed as either way too strict, like they'll think, oh, you're just being a bitch, on one hand, or you're too nice and then students walk all over you. It's hard to get that middle ground, and I'm envious of, like, my husband's a teacher and the way he talks about it is just, he tells them what to do and they do it and doesn't get much pushback from kids. So that's the main thing that I've experienced, where being a female teacher makes it a little bit tough to find that middle ground of being assertive. And
Now that I'm a parent and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, we have to do this, this, and this, and this, I have a lot more compassion for parents and what they go through, and I'm much more my communication has become a lot better. So if I see a kid struggling in class, I'll communicate home a little bit more frequently because I understand like that's what I would want somebody to do if it was my son.
We need more female STEM teachers, big time. We don't have that. You know, after Mrs. Page and Van Hoy, because they're both retiring soon, there goes your whole female physics. We have no females in physics again. And who do we keep hiring? Biology, male biology teachers. I'm like, come on, you know. So I just want the education system to kind of respect and give us leadership roles. Just, I'm happy. I'm very lucky. I'm an AP Chem teacher, because in most districts they're all males. So in our district we have 5 schools and only 2 of us are the females. You know, and then there's 3 males. But at District 211, all the AP teacher Chem, they're all males. So just giving opportunity. But we need to see more leaders. We need to see more female leaders in principals, assistant principals, those kind of things.
Sort of, if you walk into Amundsen Hall, we have a lot of pictures on the walls about the history of Amundsen, and then even the wall of faculty and staff, and you can just see so many white men pictures, portraits, and then the faculty is still predominantly white and male. And if you're a white guy, you're like, cool, I fit right in. But as soon as you're somebody who's not that demographic, it becomes very alienating, and you're like, well, I'm already different.
I think that when I started this job, I didn't realize the extent to which women in my classes would see me as a mentor or somebody who's, you know, they can talk to or bring issues to. Like, I didn't realize I would be sort of a voice for like a group of people that, you know, maybe because I didn't have that as a student. All my chemical engineering classes were taught by men when I was an undergrad. But I think that sense of responsibility that, okay, well, there's people that are looking to me as an example because they don't have a lot of those examples.
It makes me so excited that people like you and other females that are just strong are going to continue science. Like I would, my AP class this year is 2/3 female.
Oh, good. Good.
I know, I'm so happy.
Until that point, I had, you know, basically all men as professors. What stood out to me is my one physics professor was a woman. And that was sort of a bright spot and did make me sort of think, oh, I could maybe do academia as a career, but I still had written it off for the most part because of representation. And then I decided to get a PhD, and I very intentionally decided to work for a woman. For my postdoc, I worked for a woman, and she's also a Black engineer, and her lab was really supportive. It was very validating, and it was also a really diverse environment. And I thought that was super cool. It was such a positive and creative and vibrant space. And it was probably the most dynamic scientific environment I had worked in compared to the other situations where, of course, I worked for women, but then diversity just in terms of gender is really not diversity. And so that sort of cemented for me the idea that we're just missing out on so many valuable viewpoints and experiences if we just are focusing on 1 or 2 types of people. I kind of looked at academia and was like, well, academia has a lot of diversity problems. I wonder if I can, you know, do a small part to try to chip away at that. And so I think that was a big part of what shaped my career trajectory.
In fact, I did call out a teacher 2 years ago. This male teacher, he would come in and ask me questions about chemistry, and I would answer him. And then he would go, "Where's Tranquil?" And I'm like, "I just answered the question." So he did that like 3 or 4 times to me, literally in the morning. And I'm like, I don't like it. It's just making me feel bad. Like, why is he even asking me if he's going to go ask somebody who doesn't have a chem degree? Tranquil's wasn't chem, he was environmental chemistry or science. And so then he came up to me and he started asking me a question about why something was something. And I said, I'm not going to answer it because you're going to go ask Tranquil anyway. Oh, what do you mean? What do you mean? And I said, because you don't trust my answer. And I said, I know what I'm doing. I have a chemistry degree. I teach AP Chem. And then he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And he had no idea he was doing it. And he apologized, and he's never done it to me since.
Oh,
in fact, it's been a really great support for me. So it's like sometimes you just have to call the obvious because they don't even realize it's there. You know what I mean? So
where there was a group of students in the back, and no matter what I did, they would not be quiet. It was like we would want to start recitation and they would just be obnoxiously loud. And this was something that when I talked to my male colleagues about this, their answers were either, oh, that's weird, I haven't experienced that. Did you ask them to quiet down? Like, well, yeah, of course I did. And they just didn't listen. Or the other response I got is, do you need me to come in there and tell them to quiet down for you? And that's a really awful response to get, because it's sort of like what sort of a father figure would do to a child, like in this inherent, like, you do not have the ability to resolve this situation. So I think in that case, I think being a woman coming into a room, we do have to fight harder for that sort of just level of respect that,
it's hard. You're always fighting. And then you feel like you're fighting. And then, like I told my husband a year ago, I just feel like every day I go in with boxing gloves on because I'm fighting. I'm fighting for you guys. I'm fighting for everything. Everything's a fight. But then when your male counterparts ask for something, they get it.
When I was a grad student, I was a TA, and I had a class of all men, a section with all men in it. And I had on one of my evaluations, it said like that I should wear higher heels because I can't reach the top of the board, and like I'd be able to use more of the board if I wore higher heels. And I was like, well, would you ever say that to a shorter man? Like, and I, did that really impact your learning? And so like comments kind of like that, and some people get much worse, but where you're sort of like, you realize that you're being perceived in a certain way that maybe your other colleagues aren't. So,
Yeah. Oh. To believe in yourself and not worry about what other people think of you, because you're always going to come across more abrasive than a male because you have to speak. And if we speak loud enough, we appear abrasive. Women appear complaining. If a male says something in any job I've been at, if a male says something, they're seen as a leader. The moment a woman says something, you're seen as a complainer. And so even though you're saying the exact same thing. So I think society has a long way to go with that. But I would just say believe in yourself and know that your hard work got you the same degree as that male. And so you deserve every position, every salary that you get.
And try to get out of your own head. And that, you're always going to be harder on yourself than the people around you are actually perceiving you to be. And so trying to quiet that insecurity and focus on, your outcomes and what you're achieving, and finding allies who can help support you in that process and make you feel confident and empowered, I think is super important. And just because you don't see somebody who's like yourself, you shouldn't give up, because that means that you have the opportunity to be that for someone else who would not maybe have that if you weren't there. And so kind of making that idea of like persistence and kind of pushing through